one thing I'd add, okay, based on building on the content video, and it's something that I mentioned in the content video, is still doing whatever you can, if it can be done, to make things right. Okay, this I'm sure is a scenario where you feel guilty about something you did, something you didn't do, something you should have done, and it's eating you up inside. And you watch the content video and you realize, oh man, all this self-blame, me just regretting this and me dwelling on it, it's not helpful. I'm going to let go of it. Okay, and that is awesome. You have to let go of it. Okay, as we discussed, the state of guilt does not help you at all. However, and this is a situation that you'll encounter, you can let go of it, but if there's still something that can be done externally, if there's still some actions you can take to make it right, you should be taking those actions, or it'll keep eating you up inside. Okay, it's hard to let go of guilt if someone else is still hurting. If you cheated someone and there's something you can do about it to make it right. If you lied to someone and there's something you can do about it to make it right. If you stole from someone, if you fucked someone over, whatever you did, if there are actions that you can take to make it right, take those actions. It's not just about sitting with yourself and just letting go of it, or you'll just keep letting go of it for fucking ever, because that'll keep popping back in. There's part of you that knows you did something that you regret and you should do something to fix it, and there is the action to fix it that's available to you and you're not taking it. Okay, so if there's some kind of action you can take it, and then let go of it at the same time. Okay, now, sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes it's just too late. It is what it is, and in that case, all you can really do is sit with yourself and release it internally, but if there are external actions, you have to be, doing it. Even if it's just apologizing. Even if it's just going up to someone and be like, hey, I'm sorry. Just that. Okay, if there's anyone you think you may have hurt, go and apologize. And that'll be one mission I'll give you for this month. Find, someone that you betrayed, someone that you disappointed, someone that you fucked over, someone that you cheated, whatever it is, and apologize to them. Instead of just holding it in, feeling guilty, and just releasing it, but knowing that there's still maybe something you can do, like an apology, go and apologize. And when you apologize too, as a little side note, don't need the other person to take the apology. Don't go up and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I apologize. Do you forgive me? Like, you don't need them to forgive you. It's not about them forgiving you. It's about you doing everything that's in your power and then forgiving yourself. Okay, whether they forgive you or not, you did all you could do, and that's the important part. Okay, so mission number 1, find someone and go and apologize. And don't be ashamed of apologizing. It doesn't make you weaker. Okay, in reality, it takes a lot of courage to go and apologize. And if there's anything you can do to make it right, do it. Okay, and another mission building on this is forgive someone. Apologize to someone and forgive someone. Wherever you're holding any kind of resentment, any grudge, go and forgive that person. Tell them you forgive them. Okay, remember, the more you forgive others, the more you'll forgive yourself. Okay, so apologize to someone, forgive someone, and when you forgive someone too, don't need them as well to take the fact you're forgiving them to be like, oh, thank you. Like, they don't have to acknowledge it. Probably most of the time, and this is where it gets a little crazy, they won't even think or know that they did anything wrong. Like, you're going to talk to them, you're like, hey, I forgive you for what you did or didn't do, and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And that's fine. Okay, it's about you and what's happening inside of you. Realize that there's real guilt. Okay, like, you have to be realistic here. Where, say you fuck someone over and you're like, oh my god, this is, bad. They're hurting because of it. I'm going to apologize and then release myself of the state of guilt and the constant self-blame and self-abuse. Okay, that's, say, real guilt. However, due to the world that we live in now, due to the way that we're conditioned, a lot of us place those unrealistic standards on ourselves. We become perfectionists. We read into situations, and we carry guilt based off of things where there's no reason to feel guilty about them. Okay, if you take the people pleaser, for example, the people pleaser believes in the fact that, everyone should like that person. They should be agreeable to everyone. They should be nice to everyone. And if they do so, everyone will be nice to them. Everyone will approve of them. Everyone will like them. That's the people pleaser. And they might meet someone, and due to the nature of the world, there's just no chemistry between them and that person. Now, instead of recognizing, maybe I'm not meant to get along with everyone. Maybe we're not all meant to like each other. Maybe there's some people I'll connect with and some people I won't connect with, and that's fine. What they will do is then beat themselves up because of that and feel guilty that they weren't able to make that person like them. Okay, so that guilt there, it's based on something that is not real. It's not realistic. It's all in your head, Or you may read into a situation where you feel like you did something wrong, like take the people pleaser again as an example. Say you're in a relationship and you really want to please your partner, and you want to, cook this amazing meal for your partner, get this really nice wine, whatever it is, like make it really fucking fancy. And you go to the grocery store and you have it all planned out and you're really excited. It's your partner's favorite food. And let's just say they're out of that food, whatever it is, they're out. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's too late. You're like, oh, fuck. And, you still cook up a meal, but it wasn't your partner's favorite meal. And your partner comes home and there you are, with the second favorite meal of your partner. Now, for your partner, that might not mean shit. Your partner may not even give a fuck. Your partner might just appreciate the intention, but it's not that big of a deal that it wasn't your partner's favorite meal. But in your mind, you're like, fuck. And then you feel guilty about something like that. Okay? And a lot of guilt that we carry, and it's crazy to kind of realize, is that kind of guilt. It's guilt where it's you trying to live up to unrealistic things, and you reading into things and living in this world of fantasy, carrying guilt where in reality there's no reason to feel guilty about that. With the way that we're conditioned to, if you watch a lot of YouTube videos, for example, or there's a lot of role models that you have, you just see a certain side of those people, and again, everyone's telling you, you must be like that. And of course, it's impossible to be like that, so then you feel guilty for not being perfect, guilty for not being like that all the time. That kind of guilt is not based in reality. Okay, so you have to distinguish the two. There's guilt that's based in reality and guilt that's based on, perfectionist standards and illusions. A question to ask yourself here is, what unrealistic standards are you holding yourself up to? And make a list. What do you think you should be, where if you sit down with yourself and you're honest with yourself, you know that it's impossible to be that. Okay, who are you comparing yourself to? Another question to ask yourself. The best side of what person? If you're watching a lot of YouTube videos, who are your idols? If you're watching movies, if you're reading about people, or books about people, who are your idols and what side of them are you seeing? And you got to be honest here. What side of them are you seeing? Because you're not necessarily seeing them in their entirety. Even your friends, even people who you're only seeing a certain side of them. And if you're comparing, usually the side that we put out publicly is the best side of ourselves. If you're comparing the worst side of yourself, because you know yourself, versus the best side of them, you're never going to win. If you look at someone's Instagram, like all your friends' Instagram or your friends' Facebook accounts, and you see these amazing pictures, and you're like, shit, why am I not like that? Why am I not always happy? Why am I not always traveling? And you beat yourself up. That's not based in reality. And there's no reason to feel guilty about not being that, because they are not that all the time either. The more behind the scenes you see, the better. I was at Coachella recently, and it was my first time there to, just checking it out. And throughout the years, you'd always see like all these social media posts about Coachella, and everyone having an absolute blast. And you're conditioned to think that every second you're there, it's going to be fucking action-packed and crazy. And then you go there, and it's fun. It's a great experience, but it's not all that. And everyone there, you realize, is in their phone 24 fucking 7. You know, they're all there. The hit songs come on. They're fucking taking pictures and doing their stories and their captions, and they're not really enjoying it. So here you see behind the scenes. You know, it's fun, yeah, but it's not what you're conditioned to think it's going to be based on those stories and captions. And remember, too, every time you see someone doing a fucking Instagram story or Snapchat, that's them, in a way, you know, not always, but in a way, probably most of the time for most people, disconnecting from the present moment and, you know, I'm going to withdraw from the fun and view it as an outsider and analyze and, you know, judge the moment. So instead of being just carried away, like if you're joking with your friends, you're having a blast, no one wants to be like, hey, let's all stop laughing for a second, or just keep laughing, let me just take a picture of us laughing, because it gets you out of the moment. It gets you out of the experience. So remind yourself of that. Every time you see a story, you're like, oh man, that looks like so much fucking fun. Oh shit, I wish I was at that crazy party or that crazy restaurant. If you see someone like, you know, snapping their food. But no, for that person, instead of being there and enjoying the food or enjoying the party, they withdraw and post it. Okay, so don't believe the hype there, and try to see behind the scenes. You know, the more you see behind the scenes, the better. Another mission I'll give you here is write down 3 people you look up to, or 3 of your idols, and make a list of some of their flaws and some of the mistakes that they've made. Some of their flaws and some of the mistakes that they made. And you can catch yourself here. If you are really bought into this whole, like, you must be perfect all the time, you're going to have trouble seeing their flaws. And then, of course, if you're looking up to them like there's someone you idolize, you're going to keep beating yourself up because you know you have flaws, and if you can't see flaws in them, they're no longer human. Okay, so what are their flaws and what are some of the mistakes that they made? And realize how even with those flaws and those mistakes, it's okay. And you probably still look up to them, and in reality, you look up to them even more. And what'll that tell you? It's also okay to have some flaws, and it's okay to make fucking mistakes. Making a mistake doesn't ruin your self-worth. It doesn't ruin who you are. Everyone makes mistakes. It's human to make mistakes. It's part of life. Okay? So make a list. 3 people you look up to, realize their flaws, their mistakes, and realize it's okay. You know, and the less harsh you are too, you might judge them at first, like, fucking man, look at that, those flaws, I can't believe I never realized them. But with time, the less harsh you are on them, guess what? The less harsh you will be on yourself. Okay? And with this whole, you know, comparison game, be realistic too in terms of who you compare yourself to. You know, this is something I'd see for years when it comes to, say, socializing or success with women, where I teach it, and guys would come and take a program, and they'd be beating themselves up and feeling guilty because they weren't as quote-unquote skilled as me. Okay? Now, what I tell them is like, hey man, what you have to realize is that, first of all, for me to get to this point, it took fucking years. You know, at this point, it's like over 10 years, you know, that I've been doing this and thinking about it and obsessing about it nonstop. It took thousands upon thousands upon thousands of different reference experiences. It took me traveling the world, etc., etc. It's like, this is all I did to get there, and you're comparing yourself. It's an unfair comparison. It's like if you start playing basketball right now and you compare yourself to Jordan and you feel guilty about not being as good as Jordan. It's like, no, that there, it's not based in reality. Okay, so wherever your guilt is coming from, you must make sure that it's based in reality. And if not, wake up. Okay, snap out of the lies you've been sold on. Stop making these unfair comparisons. Stop believing, again, that everyone must like you all the time. You must always be perfect. Stop reading into things. Look behind the scenes. Don't believe the lie. Okay, and I mean, here's another one too. A big part of guilt is we don't know the answers. Like, that's something we bought into. We must always have the answer to everything. And when you're faced with a situation where you don't have the answer, a situation where you're trying to figure something out and you just can't, you then feel guilty about it and you beat yourself up. You know, and the self-abuse kicks in. So let go of the need to be perfect. Let go of the need of always knowing the answer. And be careful too in terms of how you're conditioned with mainstream. Okay, huge. I mean, anyone who's trying to sell you in the mainstream is conditioning you to feel guilty about being you. You know, if you're buying into that, if you're buying into all the ads, all the commercials, anything mainstream, it's telling you don't be you. It's wrong to be you. Being you is not good enough. You better feel guilty about being you. And they're going to amplify that guilt of being you and then sell you on the solution. It's so wrong to be you. Look at this. And then they just keep amplifying it. And you're watching that ad and you're like, oh man, fuck, they're right. It's not good enough to be me. And then, here's the solution. This article of clothing. The six-pack abs. This, the perfume. Whatever it is. This house, this car. That's what you need. Until you get that, feel guilty because you're not good enough. If you did something that, say, you feel guilty about that affected someone, of course, take the appropriate actions to make things right, and then let go of that attachment to that state of guilt that's inside of you, but also remind yourself that you don't know the outcome. You don't know the final outcome of things. You know, if, say, you do something and it fucks someone over, and let's just say there's nothing you can even do about it in terms of the actions you take, how do you know it fucked them over? Ponder on that. What if temporarily it fucks them over, but in the long run, that's the best thing that ever fucking happened to them? You don't know. What if you did something you don't feel guilty about, but that fucked him over in the long run? Remind yourself, you don't know. I don't like myself because of my looks, and I feel it makes me self-sabotage a lot. How can I let go of this feeling? When it comes to your looks, once again, it's guilt that's based, is it guilt that's based in reality or fiction, let's just say. And with looks, it's fiction. You know, like that's you. That's what you look like. Okay, now of course, is there appropriate action you can take? You know, can you perhaps change your diet? Can you perhaps start going to the gym or doing any kind of physical exercise? The answer is yes. Take that action. Okay. Now, similar to taking action to make something right, you don't have to, have the other person like say, "Oh, you made it right." You're not doing it for them. You're just doing everything you can in your power. It's not about the outcome of that. It's about you doing what's right. The same with the gym. It's not about you reaching a certain point. It's about you doing what's in your power. Exercise, diet, so on and so forth. And then beyond that, there's nothing you can do about it unless you're going to go do some plastic surgery or something. Like, that is you. And don't buy into the hype once more of mainstream. Again, a lot of the guilt that we have comes from the way that you're conditioned. Don't buy into that. It's like, you're not good looking enough. Look at you. You need to look like this. Like, no matter who you are, you're going to feel guilty about your looks. Okay, and also notice how the standard of what good looking is changes. 50 years ago for a guy, it's the hairy James Bond guy. Now it's like the more boyish looking Leonardo DiCaprio. It changes with time. Like, there's always a different standard. The same with women. It's like Marilyn Monroe. Now it's like, become a stick. The standard changes, and if you keep comparing yourself to that, once more, I must always be like this, you're never going to win. And remember, too, like what you see in pictures, what you see in commercials, what you see in movies, there's a ton of lighting. There's a ton of, like different kinds of framing. It's not what people really look like. Okay? Even in, and this is where you really have to see behind the scenes, some of these more casual video blogs, if you go on YouTube, where it's like someone holding a cell phone, like, "Hey, what's up?" and talking in the cell phone. It looks casual, but if you actually see how some of these people do it, there's studio lights everywhere, there's makeup on, and all that shit. It's like, how can I get the casual style while looking fucking amazing? Even with a webinar like this, you may think right now, and it's not necessarily the best lighting, that this is natural lighting, or there might be like a little lamp, but what's this? What is this? Okay. Now for me, I want my eyes to pop. I want my face to pop. I want to be fucking there when delivering the content. But there's the behind the scenes. Okay. Always keep an eye out for what's behind the scenes. Ask yourself, What's the reality here? This is what's presented to me. Fucking cool, but what's the reality here? And don't be disgusted by it. Don't think that it takes away from what's presented to you. It's like, oh, that's how things work. Cool. If they put you in the same fucking lighting as, say, some dude who looks really fucking jacked and, like got you to work out a bit before, so you got like that fucking pump. Maybe if you're not jacked, you won't look as jacked as him, but you'll look a hell of a lot better than you looking at yourself in the mirror right now. Some people actually look better off in the camera than in person. That too. There was some Facebook live streams that I did recording Transformation Mastery. And in those live streams, and actually, you know what, I'll just overlay a few here. I look like dog shit, like absolute dog shit. I'm exhausted. I'm like working pretty much nonstop, getting this outline done, recording it, making it fucking perfect. Yet in the videos, due to 4K and due to high-end gear, I don't look that fucking bad. Okay, so compare reality versus what's presented to you. And again, that doesn't mean that people should not present themselves in a good way. Of course not. But realize that there's presentation in reality. How to know if you're making guilt up or if it's the real thing. I'll link this question to another one here where it's how to know if it's self-sabotage or a real failure where you didn't self-sabotage, it just didn't work out. And this is something that I do. It's like, it sounds a little fucked, but it works. Imagine someone put a gun to your head and say, tell you the truth. What is it? You always know. If someone puts an actual fucking gun to your head and tells you, hey, are you making guilt up or is it the real thing? You'll know. The first thing that pops in your mind, that's the truth. Now, if you think about it too much before giving your answer, then you can rationalize and be like, well, no, maybe it is real guilt. But there's still part of you that knows bullshit. You always know. Gun to the head. What's the right answer? Bang, that. Gun to the head. Is it self-sabotage? Are you fucking this up? Yes. Then, oh, of course not. It was just a mistake. No, what is it? Okay. Or if you're beating yourself up, like, why did I self-sabotage this? Gun to the head. Oh, it was a real mistake. There's nothing I could have done. Gun to the head. It's fucked, but it works. Can you feel guilty about giving up? Yeah, you can feel guilty about giving up. However, once more, it's asking yourself, based in reality or fantasy, did you give up? It's like gun to the head. What's the right answer? Did you give up because it was the smart thing to do, or it was over? Or do you know deep down inside you could have done more and you gave up as a form of self-sabotage? How do I handle being triggered by people spamming the chat with BS such as LOL, thanks, and other comments which contribute zero to the discussion? Once again, be realistic. The more you understand how things work, the less you'll feel guilty, and the more forgiving you will be of others and, of course, yourself. You gotta see behind the scenes, and you got to develop that empathy of placing yourself in other people's shoes. It's like, hey, some people might, on one hand, like to post LOL, inject some fun. There's one take. Some people might like saying thanks. Maybe show some appreciation. But let's just say there's some total bullshit comments that keep popping up. Like dick pics and dumb shit. Even if that's the case, of course, it contributes some like, what the fuck to the chat. But say it continues, just like you, I might be like, this is kind of annoying. However, I won't get triggered or judge the person because I know that wherever that is coming from, it's that person dealing with what's going on inside of them. And it just is what it is. In most cases, I'm like, shit, I hope that that person dives deep and releases some of the stuff that's provoking that type of trolling or provoking them maybe being triggered and posting something versus, fuck that person, why are they ruining it? Put yourself in their shoes. The same thing with, again, I compare it to me and the media scandal. It's like, I could look at all the people hating me, and I'm like, why do they hate me? Fuck them. But no, if I place myself in their shoes, and I said this in the content video, and I read what was being said about me without knowing me, I'd feel the exact same thing. So there's no reason to feel triggered or judge them. I mean, it is what it is. The same with how the media works. A great book I'd highly recommend, anyone read, is Trust Me Online by Ryan Holiday. amazing book that describes how the media works today, you know. And this is a book that actually got me, just reading this book, out of so much hatred going through that scandal. Because although I didn't really hate the people hating me, because I'm like, I could see where they were coming from, when I was seeing all these articles just writing lies, and I'm like, why are they doing this? How is this happening? What? Like, there was so much hatred towards the news. And then reading that book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, I'm like, oh shit, that's how the news works. It doesn't make it right, obviously, but knowing that that's why this is happening, and that's the place they're coming from, it made sense, and suddenly, all of that hatred was gone. Usually whatever you judge other people on is what you judge yourself on a lot. So if it's, I'll see this like sometimes like with friends, if they go out and they're like judging, say, different girls on their looks, it's usually those guys who are fucking paranoid about how they look like all the time, you know? So whatever you're judging people on is what you're judging yourself on. You know, people in, fitness, for example, you'll see this where if you go from not working out, like I have a friend who's like obsessed with working out right now. That guy, when I hang out with him now, all he does is judge people who don't work out and who are not perfect with their health, who don't count their fucking calories, who don't count their macros, etc., etc. Constantly judging them. Why? Because he's constantly judging himself on that too. Okay, whenever you judge someone else, it's always a reflection of what you judge yourself on. Kind of building on what I said in the very beginning, when you should make things right. Making things right, it's also being realistic about that. So say, here's a common one. You are in a relationship and you cheat on someone. You cheat on the person you're dating. And let's just say you split up. You know, and that person never found out that you cheated on them, but you split up. And it's now a year, 2 years later, and you might be in another relationship. And that person might also be in another relationship, you know, or not, who knows. But that guilt might still be there. And part of you is still like, fuck, why did I cheat on that person? God damn it, you know? And you'll hear the first part of this webinar. And I'm like, hey, go and make things right. And in your mind, you're like, well, to make things right, I got to own up to what I did and go to my previous partner and tell them that I cheated on them. However, viewing it at this point in time, does saying that help? Does saying that make things right? And the answer here is not necessarily. You know, now that you're done, all that's going to do is probably hurt that person. And in that case, maybe, just maybe, not saying anything at all is making things right, and then just releasing it internally. So it's nuanced here. Not always. Sometimes, again, going up and owning it could make things better, could make things right, or it could help that person maybe understand why the relationship might not have worked. But it's always nuanced. So just keep this in mind too. If you want to become conscious of an unconscious guilt situation, do the meditative exercise where you imagine you're dead. And another question you can ask yourself here is, what would you do now, or who would you be if there was no past? If right now you had a clean slate, you came in this world and all that baggage, that past that's running you that you just can't let go of, where you just keep beating yourself up for things you did or didn't do or should have done, imagine that was gone. And the same you appeared right now. No past, clean slate. Who would you be? How would you act? What would you do? And then you can kind of see, ooh, shit, that's holding me back here. Another exercise / mission for you, and I want you to do this, is to write down in all areas of life what your ceiling for success is. Okay, what is your ceiling for success? At what point is it too much success and you don't deserve it, or you just can't see yourself aligned with that? A common one is money. You know, everyone wants to make more money. Do you want to make more money? You're like, yeah, of course I want to make more money. If I told you right now, go and make billions, most likely you can't see yourself be aligned with making billions. You'll try to make more money, but that goal of making billions, you know you'll never reach it. There's part of you that deep down inside really believes billions is impossible for you to make. It's beyond your ceiling of success when it comes to your finances. Could you make $1 million? Everyone's like, yeah, I can make $1 million. Be realistic here. Could you see yourself in your lifetime right now making $1 million? Where you look into your bank account, you check your balance, and there's a fucking $1 million or €1 million. Could you realistically see that? If the answer is no, okay, that's above your ceiling of success. And what you have to do here is give yourself the honest answer. Realistically, what's the max amount of money that you could see yourself seeing in your bank account when you check it in your life, or in the next 5 years, or this year? What's the maximum amount? Okay, what's the ceiling in terms of who you see yourself being with is a romantic partner? If you saw you in the street with someone in an intimate relationship, what's the ceiling in terms of that person's looks, in terms of that person's personality, in terms of that person's interests, job, attitude, everything? At what point does it become too much and you don't feel like you deserve it? What is too hot for you? Where if you saw yourself in the street with that person, you'd look at that and be like, that's weird. How did he get that person? Or how did she get that person? It just doesn't make sense. At what point does it stop making sense? What is your ceiling of success when it comes to romantic relationships? What is your ceiling of success when it comes to friendships? Okay. Even in terms of your group of friends, if you have a group of friends, what's your ceiling of success in terms of the ranks in that group, or in terms of the status of that group? Could you see yourself as being the main person of that group? Or are you always the number 2? Or are you always the funny person of the group? Or are you always the person where that group really doesn't give a shit about you? You could, if they're all going to do something, you always have to invite yourself and make sure that you get the details and make sure that you're invited because they don't care. Or is someone always going to make sure that you're there? Like, you have to be there for it to be fun or for it to be a thing. There's always kind of an outsider in the group. Is that you? What's your ceiling there? What is your ceiling for health? At what point do you not resonate with being healthier than this? Okay. Being very clear on that is huge. It all comes down in the beginning with acknowledging where you're at, acknowledging what's going on, becoming conscious of it. Okay, so write down in extreme detail your ceiling of success in all areas of life. Okay, even in terms of how smart. How smart. People have a ceiling. And it's crazy how this ceiling just limits you. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell someone from a very young age that they're fucking stupid, you're going to see them build their whole personality around, literally can't be smarter than this. Very low. And they'll self-sabotage a lot and just keep finding situations and things to reinforce that they can't be smarter than that and build everything on top of that. And then you could come to them and be like, hey, read this book. Let's do this. Let's pursue this. And there's that belief where it's like, no, I'm not smart enough. So what's your ceiling? Then ask yourself, okay, where did this come from? And it always comes from the way that we're conditioned. And it's important to understand this too. A lot of self-sabotage is due to guilt, where we just, again, feel guilty about being more than that. But also a big part of it is fear. Because a lot of these beliefs, or where these ceilings come from, are based on core beliefs. Where when you're conditioned, and this is important to understand, you come into this world and you have to quickly get your bearings on things. So you're going to look at people, say your parents, teachers, friends, to make a lot of assumptions. Okay, you either learn through first-hand experience, where you try something for yourself, or second-hand. First-hand experience is you put your hand on the stove and you burn yourself. You're like, oh, it hurts, I'm not going to do that. Second-hand is you look at someone else and you look at how certain they are and what they're saying, if their behavior is aligned, if they're very congruent with what they're saying, and how much authority they have. Okay, if they're an authority figure, or if a lot of people also buy into what they're saying. And if whatever they're saying kind of passes through those different checkpoints, like, okay, they're certain, their behavior's aligned with it, and a lot of people believe it too, you're going to assume that it's true. So as a kid, you don't have time to quickly test everything firsthand. I mean, even as an adult, you can't. So you're going to look at people who have authority, say parents, teachers, or in your class, because that's your world as a kid, it's the classroom, what everyone else believes. And you're going to form these assumptions. So one could be, if your parents tell you at a very young age that people who make a lot of money are corrupt, you're going to be like, okay, that's bad. Or if your parents tell you it's impossible to make $1 million, that's bad. If your parents tell you you're stupid, you're like, okay, I'm stupid, because they're very congruent. And they have a lot of authority. They're my parents. I'm stupid. So you're going to form these core beliefs or these core assumptions. And then you're going to act on those, okay, from those, reinforcing them and investing in them, and you're going to build other beliefs and assumptions based on those core assumptions. And then, of course, there's a lot of fear in questioning these, because if that is wrong, then everything that's built on that is wrong too. Okay, and a lot of, again, those ceilings of success have to do with that, and you have to dive into what are these core assumptions, these core beliefs, where did they come from, and what happens if I let go of them. And that's huge when it comes to self-sabotage. What happens, or where's the resistance, where's the fear of you going above that ceiling? What's the fear of you succeeding? What's so bad about you succeeding? For a lot of people, it's easier to endure failure than it is to endure success. That doesn't mean that failure is fun. It doesn't mean that failure is comfortable, but it's what we're used to and it's what we resonate with. Success, on the other hand, it's a lot harder to resonate with due to the way that we're conditioned. We all think we want approval, we want praise, but if someone compliments you, for most people, our default is to be like, oh, whatever, to brush off the compliment, or interpret it as someone being condescending to us or sarcastic. Hey, I like your shirt. Like, why are they mocking my shirt? Or, oh, the shirt, whatever. We can't endure it. If things go too well in our life, if we become too successful, we'll find a way to ruin it. If our relationship gets a little too well, too nice, we'll ruin it too. We all want the perfect partner, but if we got that perfect partner, we'd ruin it. So, what happens if you don't ruin it? And then see what kicks in and dive into that. And realize too that with self-sabotage, again, there's no such thing really as self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is when there's a rift between what you consciously want and what you subconsciously want, or what you consciously believe and what you subconsciously believe. In reality, you always act in your own best interest, and you always get what you want. You always do. The difference is consciously, subconsciously. So say, for example, you grow up and you look at your parents, and this is an example I use all the time. You look at your parents to form the assumption of what love is, and say your parents are divorced. You're going to be like, okay, well, love equals separation. And you're going to keep falling in love, or say going for these partners who aren't available. And or you'll keep ruining the relationship so they leave you. And they're like, why am I self-sabotaging relationships? It's like consciously you may be thinking that, but subconsciously, what are you doing? You're acting in alignment with that belief that love equals abandonment. If part of you believes you don't deserve more money than this, you might make a little bit more and then you ruin it, or you just never let yourself past that point. And consciously you're like, why am I self-sabotaging? But no, subconsciously you're getting what you want. You're getting what you think you deserve. Okay, so a lot of self-sabotage is what happens if I succeed? And the same with guilt. What happens if I'm free of guilt? Because they are often intertwined. What's bad about success? What's bad about freeing myself of guilt? What's bad about feeling worthy? Releasing that. I feel guilty for not having fixed the conflicting relationship of my parents. I feel that I'm not deserving any kind of romantic relationship. So here, once again, I feel guilty for not having fixed the relationship with my parents. That most likely, is unrealistic expectations and requirements you place on yourself. I must fix everything in the world. I must fix my parents. Now, of course, if there's some actions you can do to help, take them. But beyond that, there's nothing you can do. Do everything you can, and then you got to let go of it because that's not based in reality. And you'll literally see people like this, by the way. This is how extreme these unrealistic requirements and, guilt, unrealistic guilt kicks in. You'll see people feel guilty and just attack themselves because they haven't fixed every problem in the world. I kid you not. There's problems in the world going on in other countries. There's horrible things going on in other countries. And there are horrible things where you can only do a certain amount. Beyond that, if you're being fucking real and honest with yourself, there's nothing you can fucking do. What are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. But instead of doing what they can, and then, hey, you acted in a realistic way, you did the best you could do, that's all you could do, beyond that, release it, they just keep feeling guilty. They're like, I don't deserve to be happy because someone in this other country in the middle of a war is not happy either. That's not realistic. That's just a fucking excuse to keep fueling your guilt. I can cry when I'm emotional, but when my sister died, I couldn't cry. Even at the funeral, I couldn't. I still feel guilty. I couldn't cry, even though I really wanted to. So once more, let's look at fact and fiction here. Here, by what you said, you really wanted to cry at her funeral. So your intention was to cry, but you couldn't. Now, the time has passed. There's nothing you can really do about it. Technically, you could cry now, but you wrote down, and here you got to reinforce, your intention was to cry. So it's not looking back like you weren't sad, because that's what guilt will tell you. It's like, hey, you didn't cry, you weren't sad, you didn't really love your sister. You should feel more sad about it, and you should have cried. It shows you didn't care. You didn't love her. That's what you're telling yourself, and that's bullshit. Okay? Grounded in reality here, your intention was you really wanted to cry. You did care. You know that. Okay? And she knows that too. It's not this one action of you crying at a funeral that's going to define if you care or love your fucking sister. That is fucking fiction. That is your mind blowing shit up, twisting things, and reading into it for you to keep feeling guilty and keep beating yourself up. Okay? It's not like, you love your sister her entire life, and then, it's over, and it's like, no, you didn't, because you didn't cry at her funeral. That one moment at her funeral, you didn't cry, it takes away from the entire lifetime, that up until that point that you spent together. Fuck no. Okay? So, be real here. Beyond that, is there anything you can do about it now? No. So let go of it. That's all you can do. And what you have to ask yourself here is, why do you love staying in this state of guilt? What's so good about beating yourself up about this? And what happens if you let yourself off the hook? What's the fear about letting yourself off the hook in terms of not crying at a funeral? What happens? What happens if that's okay? And then those sensations, you dive into them. Everyone grieves differently. Yep, that too. And once more, it's not the expression of the thing, it's the thing. Your intention was you were sad. You don't have to cry to be sad. Crying doesn't make the sad real. It's not like, you're not sad unless you cry. You're like, no, my intention and what I feel is I'm sad. You don't have to cry necessarily for that to be real, for that to be there. As a people pleaser, I take on work and responsibility for things, but at the same time, I tend to push those things off and delay them or not do them. How does that work? The question is not how does that work? The question is, what do you love so much about doing that? Why do you love so much taking responsibility for things and then pushing those things off, delaying them and not doing them? What do you love about that? What do you get out of it? What's the kick you get out of doing that? How is that good? And then it's being honest with yourself. And what happens if you don't do that? That's the second question. How is that good? And what's so bad about doing the opposite? Why do you not want to do the opposite? Tuning into that, letting go of it.